Good morning, everybody. We want to thank you for being here today. I'm Thomas Martinez, the managing editor of the Fort Worth Report. Our CEO, Chris Kotler, wishes he was here today, but unfortunately he's battling a mild case of COVID and didn't want to be a super spreader. So it's because of supporters like you that we are able to bring the community together at an opportunity like this and engage and listen to experts and deliberate solutions on issues that affect all of us in our daily lives here in Fort Worth. We want to hear from you too. In your Fort Worth goodie bags, there's cards that you can write questions for our panelists. Pass them down to the sides. We will have people gathering them up. Also, we want to thank Fort Worth Botanic Garden for allowing us to host our Candid Conversation event here this morning. A really beautiful setting. And the Fort Worth Cultural District is a perfect place to hold an important community conversation. With that being said, please help me welcome Fort Worth Botanic Garden CEO and President Patrick Newman.
Thank you, and good morning to all of you. On behalf of our incredibly dedicated staff and volunteers, let me be the first to say welcome to the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. We are delighted to have you here this morning for this critical conversation. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, please, if your schedule allows, stay afterward and visit the garden and take in all that it has to offer on a beautiful fall morning. It's finally fall, y'all, so a wonderful time to see the garden. If today's schedule prevents you from doing that, please come back and see us again. There are a number of things that we are providing in terms of opportunities to create emotional souvenirs as you visit the garden. So there are lots of things around Ramos, and there's a full calendar of events there. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my good friend Annette Landeros and I, we put our heads together a little over a year ago, which is kind of a scary thing, right? And we came up with this idea of a community ofrenda. And so for Dia de los Muertos, we will have a community ofrenda out in the Rose Garden. The rose steps will be covered in marigolds, and we hope that will become an opportunity for the community as we move forward. Our vision at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden is to be globally renowned and locally treasured. And that local treasure piece is about creating emotional souvenirs and creating a space where we all authentically belong. And today's conversation helps drive us in that direction. So please come, please belong, please be part of what we have to offer, and thank you for being here this morning.
Thanks, Patrick. I'd also like to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors. We'd like to thank our series sponsors, the North Texas Community Foundation and Southside Bank. Our silver sponsors, First Financial Bank, Lockheed Martin, and the Real Estate Council of Greater Fort Worth. And our supporting sponsors, Cristo Rey Fort Worth College Prep, Fort Worth Botanic Garden, Fort Worth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and United Way of Tarrant County. And now, finally, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Juan Antonio Ramos. Juan Antonio is the collaborations editor at KERA, and he works closely with us here at the Fort Worth Report. He's a veteran journalist and editor who spent 24 years at the Fort Worth Star Telegram, in Australia. And he has extensive experience working in both English and Spanish media. He's active in Fort Worth's Latino community. Please help me welcome Juan Antonio.
Buenos días a todos. Good morning, everyone. Bienvenidos, welcome. Really excited to be here. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us, looking ahead to this great conversation. But before I start, I would like to give a big thank you to the Fort Worth Report staff. They've done a fantastic job of putting this together. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. They have to do all their daily jobs and try and organize not just this conversation, of course, but all the other conversations that they put together. So please, big round of applause to the Forward Report staff. All right, so quick introductions. I would like to go ahead and introduce our panelist, Mr. Ricky Rodriguez, he's the Executive Director of Tarrant County's Republican Party. Mr. Rodriguez has worked in multiple political campaigns, including Congressman Ron Wright and Texas State Representative Jeff Casey. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sal Espino, former Fort Worth City Council member. Espino has lived in North Fort Worth most of his life. He has an extensive record of service to his community and city. Thank you, Mr. And Mrs. Roxanne Martinez, Fort Worth ISD board member. Martinez is a small business owner, nonprofit leader, community advocate, wife, and mom. So I would like to start this conversation, kind of just a general theme, general topic. And basically, what I would like for our panelists to discuss is what does it mean exactly when we talk about the Latino vote? Obviously it's a universally accepted term. I mean, we use it all over the country. We use it here in the state, everywhere when we want to talk about Latinos voting. But there are a lot of nuances, a lot of details that I would like our panelists to discuss. What exactly does it mean when we talk about the Latino vote? What is something you want people to understand when we talk about the Latino vote? Mr. Rodriguez.
First, well, good morning, everybody. So, thank you for coming out. What it means for the Latino vote, what it means to me is that as a Latino, we're realizing that we have a voice. With a growing number of population growing in the United States, especially in Texas, we are realizing that we have this voice that now elected officials have to listen to us, have to listen to our values, have to reach out to family values, reach out to faith values. So to me, that means is that now we have to come together and really exercise our right out there to make sure that our representatives are listening to us and are representing our values to local, state, and federal governments.
Good morning. Thank you again. Muchas gracias for being here. First, I want to say that when I hear the term Hispanic, that was a term created by the census, and what I want to say is that first and foremost, Hispanics are Fort Worthians, Texans or Tejanos, and Americans. We are part of this city, this county, this state, this country, and the voice of the community should be heard. Number two, it's also a diverse community. They are obviously, just like any other community, it's very diverse across socioeconomic, educational levels, and also, of course, depending on where folks trace their origin. They're obviously here in Fort Worth and Tarrant County, a lot of folks who are proud to call themselves Mexican American or Chicano, right? There are also obviously folks from the great island of La Isla del Encanto, Puerto Rico. We have Central Americans. So Hispanic, as the census created it, meant obviously those that come from countries that speak Spanish or Spain, and maybe even Brazil's included in that term, I'm not sure. Then there's also Latino, which comes from folks that trace their heritage to Latin American countries. But to me, when I hear the term Hispanic, there's over 60 million in the country. Here, Fort Worth now is 36% Hispanic. Tarrant County is 30%. What I want to say is that we are part of the community. It's a diverse community, and we want to be involved, and we want to be asked to be involved.
When I think about what does the Latino vote mean to me, one, I think about community, because as Sal said, Latinos do make up a large part of not just Fort Worth, but the nation. And one thing that I do want to reiterate, is, as Sal said, is that we are not one homogeneous group. I mean, we do come together around some shared values and cultural backgrounds, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we all think the same and vote the same. So collectively, I think when I think of the term Latino vote, it's really elevating the voice of Latinos. Varying beliefs, varying ideals, and around particular issues, but collectively, when you think about the group, there are some values that rise to mind, such as family, such as faith, such as community, and collectively, as a group, we want a voice, and so it is time that our representatives hear the Latino voice.
Thank you. Thank you. Does it work? No? We're gonna have some fun. About 2 weeks ago, there was a report that indicated that for the first time in the history of the state, Latinos are now the largest demographic group in Texas. So obviously, this is a milestone, but that is no surprise to many of us, because we've seen it, we experienced it, we're part of it, right? We've seen it here in Fort Worth, we've seen it in Tarrant County. Some people may argue that this growth has not translated into political representation. So my question to you is, how do you tap into this potential, this explosive growth of Latinos across the state and in the country? How do you transform these numbers into political impact at the polls? Let's start with Ms. Martinez.
Thank you. Yes, and like you said, that while we're seeing this growth at the state level, we've been seeing it here locally. In Fort Worth ISD alone, we have over 60% Hispanic Latino students in our district, and so it's not news to us. We have been the majority, and I live in a neighborhood that has always been, or traditionally predominantly Hispanic Latino, so it's nothing new to us. What I think that translates to is that we as a community, as a community leader, as a community advocate, and as a representative, we have to do a better job of engaging our Hispanic Latino voters and residents. We have to engage them. That engagement looks very different than what maybe the traditional political engagement looks like. I will just tell you from experience, it's hard work. It's work that not everyone's willing to do. It takes us going to the community, the Hispanic Latino community, engaging them, and meeting them where they are, not expecting them to come to us, not expecting them to be knowledgeable on all the issues. For me, I know when, as part of my campaign last year, it took a lot of education and informing the voters. And that engagement might look very different, and like I said, it's hard work, but it's work that needs to be done. We have to seek out engagement of the Hispanic Latino population, we have to elevate their voices, and we have to represent them.
I see several different pillars to this question. First of all, when I was in school and I received a great public education from Fort Worth ISD at Circle Park Elementary, J. Pilger Middle School, and the high school friends at Poly, I took government classes, and maybe I was that nerd. Yeah, I was a nerd. I loved government, right? So we're required to take government classes, but civic education, right? I mean, Constitution Day, 4th of July, right? All these are significant historical days, and there should be lessons, right? I know Fort Worth ISD is doing this. As soon as you turn 18, you're a U.S. citizen, register to vote. Start early, start them young, right? Right now I'm teaching my 16-year-old son, who's about to be 17, how to drive, and he sees me vote in every election. So as soon as he turns 18, I'm gonna take my son to register to vote, and I'm gonna have him vote. One of the proudest days was when my daughter, she didn't get to vote for me while I was on the city council. When she turned 18, she voted for the first time, and she went to vote with her older brother, and they had a bonding moment where that's where it starts, right? Civic education. Number two, the other thing is you have to have leadership development. Put people in positions of leadership and service. And the best type of leadership development is the model that many of us follow, service leadership. Volunteer at church on a committee, at school on a PTA, serve on the city board or a county board or commission, right? Number three, run good candidates for office, right? Run good candidates, step up. I salute all those that have run for public office. It's not easy. Running for office, being an elected official, it's public service. It's community service. And it's not easy. Roxanne sacrifices much of her time being a school board trustee is an unpaid position. She still has to work, take care of her family. It's a challenge. Public service requires much sacrifice. So, and on the city council, it was $75 a week. The voters, $25,000 salary raise in 2006. Voters recently rejected a salary increase because, in my humble opinion, council went for the sky when they should have gone a little bit lower, right? And then I would say, then you've got to do good campaigns, right? I mean, as Roxanne said, it's not easy. The number one way to reach voters is voter contact face-to-face, knocking on doors. You should be exhausted if you're a candidate, office holder running for office, or campaign worker. At the end of the campaign, your shoes should all be scuffed or your tennis shoes should all be worn out. You should be tired. Number 4, redistricting. I started working on the redistricting back in 2000, both with the city council and the school board as a private citizen. I was on the council in 2010, and I served on the 4th ISD redistricting. Just recently, I was on the city council redistricting. With today's software, every citizen has a capacity to draw maps, right? And here in the city council, there was a record number of maps drawn by citizens. Draw districts that give diverse communities an opportunity to select a candidate of their choice. It doesn't necessarily mean Hispanic majority districts can elect Hispanic. District 2 for many years in Norfolk Worth elected Jim Lane. House District 90 for many years elected State Representative Mount Burnham. And that's how you do it. It's multifaceted. It's not an easy solution. It requires a lot of hard work and engagement, and you have to start, like I said, with civic education, down to leadership development, redistricting, and running quality candidates for office. That's how you get political representation.
My thing is that as Hispanics, Latinos, whatever you want to call us, we're Americans. So as you run a campaign, you run it like any other campaign. The point is, if you want to get our attention, you got to reach out with our values and have the best of ideas. So just because you're a Latino running for office doesn't mean you automatically have the Latino vote. That's not how it should be at all. So if, I don't care what race you are, if you have the best ideas, you're representing the best values, that's the vote the Latinos should vote for. So when it comes to campaigning or reaching out or using the vote, Hispanics need to be engaged in the political process, volunteer, be part of the community, and when exercise your right to vote and use it properly, and the candidates should still go out, knock on doors, and do everything. There's nothing different dealing with Latino than you are with anybody else. It's just if your message gets out, you're the one that's going to get the vote.
Thank you all for your comments and your answers. So I think one of the critical issues that we're going to be facing in this election, and obviously in previous elections too, is the spread of misinformation and disinformation. Hispanics are among the most active users of social media, and as we know, misinformation and disinformation spread very, very fast in social media. And in the Latino community, we have we face obviously misinformation and disinformation in Spanish and English. So how do we fight this? What do you consider an effective advice to make sure Latino voters are able to get objective and truthful information so they can make informed decisions? Mr. Espino, let's start with you.
Well, obviously, and I'm not, it has to be said, all right? We can have ballot security and ballot integrity, all right? Elections in the United States are not frequently stolen, right? Elections matter, elections count. So the number one information is if you go vote, tu voto cuenta, your vote is going to count, right? And it's going to count fairly, right? I think the Tarrant County Elections Office does a great job. In my humble opinion, here in Tarrant County, we have fair elections. Your ballot does matter. Your ballot is counted whether you vote by mail, early voting in person, or on election day, right? Clearly, citizens have a right to ask, to review, and be comfortable that you have ballot security. Ballot security and ballot integrity is not mutually exclusive with more ballot access. We want more people to vote. I don't understand why, and maybe people here may have a difference of opinion, why we try to make voting harder. I go vote. Sometimes I don't even have my voter registration card. I just have my ID, my license, and checks up, sign, vote. Voting to me, it's very convenient. I want to commend the county for having these voting centers, you can vote anywhere in the county. Early voting, I like to vote in the neighborhood I grew up with. I either like to vote in Northside or Diamond Hill. So I make it a point to always go to one of those early voting sites. And so that's one. And then if you're a naturalized citizen, you can register to vote. You don't have to be a natural born citizen. So that's the other thing. And so any misinformation that your vote's not going to count, that there's some sort of massive voting fraud going on, that's just not true. Your vote will count. Your vote will count. Your vote matters. In Spanish, tu voto cuenta. So, and I do think that's the message, right? That voting is important, your vote counts, and we do have ballot integrity and ballot access.
Yeah, but before you, I just have a quick question. How do we fight it? What are some of the strategies that you think we need to take, should be in place to be able to?
Well, I learned a long time ago in politics, as I was a candidate for office, never let anything negative or false go unmet with a response, because then people believe it. For example, if a candidate sends you a political advertisement that's negative, you have to respond, because people believe it. So if there's misinformation, you have to respond, and you do it. If it's on social media, you respond forcefully on social media. If it's on the radio, respond. You never let false information go out there without a factual response. And so that's how you do it, whether it's in English or Spanish, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on TikTok, but I don't use it, and on Snapchat, but I don't use it. Whatever is at your disposal, right? You use it. You cannot let anything go without a factual response.
Call it out. That's what you have to do, is call it out. It's our responsibility to inform and educate, our communities. It's just like I have middle schoolers. They tell me all day what they learned or heard on social media, on TikTok. And we have a conversation daily almost these days about what's factual and what's not, and that you can't believe everything that you read out there. But as residents, as community members, as a community advocate, it's my responsibility to call it out. When I see something, misinformation out there, I learned particularly during COVID, that there was lots of misinformation out there, and the same thing when it comes to voting in elections. And we have to have the courage to call it out, to correct people, inform them. Some people need just gentle information, and some people just need factual information. But it's a real disservice when we allow that misinformation to continue to be shared. I know when I see misinformation out there, I do my best to find the factual information, send it to that person, and then ask them, if they're posting misinformation, take it down or educate yourself. And it's our duty to do that. So that's one strategy. But it goes back in hand with education. Again, people are so quick to share things on social media. They'll share something in 2 seconds before actually looking up and finding the facts and researching it themselves. So that's a duty onto all of us, that we call it out whenever we see it.
Thank you.
Well, as Americans, there you go. As Americans, I believe that we're talking about campaigning. That's part of campaigning. So, you have one candidate saying one thing, you have another candidate saying another thing. Yes, it's up to the voter to educate yourself on that particular candidate. And so I believe that as Hispanics, Latinos, as Americans, we're smart. We can figure things out. So, when it comes to misinformation, it's called campaigning. So, I say always do your due diligence. Everybody should be an educated voter. Don't just blindly go to the polls for any candidate, but educate yourself, talk to your family, friends, go do your meet and greets with candidates, and like I said, find the candidates that speaks to you. Just because you agree with one thing and then your person next to you doesn't, just because they call it misinformation, that's not true. So it's your values, that's the candidate you should go for. And just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean that that's misinformation also. Just be an educated voter.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good point, of course, because obviously sometimes, we react to something that doesn't validate our beliefs. So we have to make sure, do all the homework, check the sources, where the information coming from. For example, in the forward report, you always have stories that you read, and then there's always hyperlinks to other information that is able to support that work that the staff is doing. So obviously that's always essential to be able to do that. So
So in 2020, the 2020 elections proved that if you engage Hispanic voters, they will cast decisive votes. And we saw that. Numbers were historic, the Latino voters going to the polls. But what do you think are some of the reasons political candidates sometimes can connect with the Latino community and they fail to engage the Latino vote? What are your thoughts about that?
It just depends on if you share that same hardworking value, I guess. So every candidate's going to have a struggle with reaching out to any particular group of people. It's just understanding the group of people that you're dealing with, understanding their values, and making sure that your goals are aligning. And you're not going to get everybody's attention right away. And sometimes you just won't click, no matter how hard you try. So it's just understanding as a candidate or even a political entity should always do their research and do their homework and see if you're going to go to a group of Latinos or any other numerous groups to understand what they want. And it might be something simple as asking, well, what's important to you? And so understanding the group that you're going after, some people got it, some people don't. So it's just really going there, doing your homework, asking people, go to meet and greets, and really find out if that particular person or candidates, political entities are connecting with that particular group of people.
Well, I would say, candidly, that a lot of campaigns, a lot of folks running for office really don't know how to, I guess, develop a message and develop a campaign plan to reach out to the diverse Hispanic communities here in Fort Worth and Tarrant County. And also, if you're a candidate running for office, you need to hire folks on your campaign team that understand the community, right? And then in the Hispanic community, you do have different levels of English fluency, Spanish fluency. You have to do micro-targeting like you do with any other group. Sending a piece of mail is not outreach, it's not engagement, right? As Roxanne said earlier, you have to also inform, like, okay, what does a city council member do? Why should I vote in a local race for mayor, city council, for school board? What does a state rep do, state senator, right? Everybody knows about the presidential elections, but at the local level, actually local elections are even, in my opinion, more just as important as the elections at the national level, and that's where we have the lowest turnout at the local level, right? In some communities, you'll see 20% turnout, which some things high for a local election, but in some precincts here in our city, turnout in those elections local can be less than 5%. And to me, that's just a lack of understanding of how to reach this diverse community. And it goes again with a total campaign plan. If you want to turn out a voter, the number one contact is direct face-to-face. You have to make 4 or 5 contacts at the door. You can knock on their door, mail, phone calls, social media, everything that's at your disposal. And then some campaigns really may not want to get that vote out. They may think they're weak in that community. They may not want to turn out those communities. So I would say that if you're running for office and you want to ask the Hispanic community to vote for you, you have to ask for their vote. You have to go to their door. You have to engage. And it does take time and money, and it should be a priority. We recently had some elections here where I didn't think that was a priority. We had an open mayor's race. Everybody wanted to reach out to the Hispanic community, but I didn't see the resources dedicated to reaching out to the Hispanic community. Like I said, just sending a piece of paper to go vote or having an event, that's not empowerment, that's not education, that's not outreach. So while there may have been a higher than normal turnout in an open mayor's race, if you looked at the data for Hispanic precincts in the city, it really wasn't that much higher. So, and that's because you have to invest and you have to make it a priority.
As a candidate, you have to really understand your community that you want to represent. I spent many years listening to the community. As a matter of fact, I never expected to be a school board trustee. The reason I became one, decided to run, was because I listened to a student who asked me for representation. And that was my whole reason for running. When you listen, you begin to understand. You have to spend more time listening up front and really understanding the community that you're seeking to represent. Find out what their values are, find out what is really important to them. To Sal's point, you also hire teams of advisors And I would caution to be careful who you hire, be careful who you work with. You know, one strategy that was shared with me was, you know, oh, you focus on the frequent voters, focus on these voters, don't worry about the non-voters. Well, when I looked at that list of non-voters, that was a lot of my community. And for you to tell me to ignore my own community, no, that's not happening. So when I went out and knocked on doors, sometimes I was talking to people, listening to people who had never voted, who were either registered, never voted, who you know, had very rarely voted, and asked them, why are you not voting? What, you know, what's important to you? Why, you know, why are you not voting? And they quite frankly told me a variety of different answers. One, I don't have anybody to vote for. Candidate has never come to my door. I don't know, you know, who's running, and I don't know what they do. I don't know what this role does. It was so much about educating the voters. And so I would say, you know, caution one, just be careful who you're listening to for advice out there, and don't discount the Hispanic Latino community, even the non-voters. Go out there and listen and find out what concerns they have and how you can engage them. A lot of times, you know, I was talking to the community, not only about the important issues that were on the ballot, but also what's at risk when they don't vote. Sometimes that's equally important. I've been really excited to be working with an organization like Jolt that has been out in the community consistently and out there talking to voters, educating, you know, in the community. Our communities want to see that consistency. They want to build trust with candidates. And so you have to look for different ways to engage them. And it's hard work. It's, like Sal said, face-to-face, door-to-door, one person at a time. And that's something that it's required.
Thank you. Okay, so before we go to final thoughts from our panelists, we have a couple of questions. I'm hoping that we can get to all of them from the audience. So, how do you discourage the mindset of I'm only one person, my vote isn't making a difference?
To discourage that is saying if you put 20 people like that mindset together, now there's 20 people that didn't vote. If you put 50 people together, there's 50 people that didn't vote, so on and so forth, and all of a sudden now you have a smaller voting base that's deciding everything for you. So I always say is yes, you're a drop in the bucket, but if there's many drops in the bucket that think like you, then all of a sudden now you don't have your representation. Now you have a small group of people deciding everything for you. So always, I would probably describe it like that, but also tell people that your voice is the most important thing that we have when it comes to the vote. That's what this country is built on. And so as Americans, it's our right, it's our duty to go vote, to have a say, and just tell people, yes, it's one single vote, but there's tons of you thinking the same way, and all of a sudden now, then you're wondering why I went like this, why I went like that. Well, you can't complain if you don't vote. So just always just be encouraging to people and realize that, you know, one with many, you can make a big difference.
Well, I think, back to Roxanne's point, I would first do the historical education, right? When this country was founded, you know, and with both the Declaration of Independence 1776 and then the Constitution of 1787, only certain people could vote. I think you had to be a male property owner to vote, right? And then certain people, you know, were not even treated as human beings. It took the Civil War that passed, those historic Civil War amendments that gave the franchise, but then you had 100 years of separate but unequal and Jim Crow laws, right? It wasn't until the heroic civil rights movement, perhaps the greatest social movement of the 20th century, that led to the franchise being in the law, right? The Civil Rights Act of '64, the voting rights. So, and then of course, so many people have died for liberty and freedom in wars, World War I, World War II. I mean, so if we could live free in a constitutional republic like the United States, it's based on the voting franchise. So we have to honor those that came before us, that sacrificed so much. Women couldn't vote. You know, we had to pass an amendment so women could vote. We have to honor everyone that made this possible by voting, number one. And then your vote does matter. I've been involved in elections locally where there were 20, 23, 25 vote margins. Some council races locally are won by 100 votes, 78 votes, and of course, even congressional races. We live in a country where we have a divided Senate, 50-50, very close margins, the U.S. House of Representatives. So yes, your vote matters because we do have very close elections, both at the local level and at the national. Think about the way we elect presidents, electoral college. Look how close it was in some of those battleground states. Look how long we waited in the last election before it was determined who was going to be the next president of the United States. So, and then the election, of course, in 2000. So, in the United States, we have very, very close elections, and your vote does matter. And we need to provide the historical context that so many people have sacrificed so that we can vote today. And number two, we have very close elections. And then I would add the third, back to Roxanne's. If you understand what a position is and the impact it has on policy, as Ricky said, you're going to vote for someone that you agree with, right? And if you're not happy with the way things are going, get out there and vote and change things.
Thank you, Sal. The sacrifice and the privilege of voting, to me, that is so important to communicate, for one. But also, I think we can kind of fight against that mentality and letting folks know, like, even though you only have one vote, you can be part of educating the rest of your community, your family. It starts with your own family. Some of our households, especially Hispanic, Latino households, we may have up to 4 or 5 voters in our households. Educate your whole family. Take your entire family. Make a family event. Take your family, your neighbors, your friends to vote with you. It's not, it's not just your vote, it's collectively as your vote. But they can be part, educated community, they can be part of the change. With our local, especially with our local elections and the low voter turnout, I have done, even before I was in this role, educating my community about the numbers. I frequently will post early voting numbers and show this is how many people have voted in Diamond Hill, this is how many people have voted in our precinct, and I'll compare it to other parts of town and challenge my community and tell them, do you want those 50 voters over there to make all decisions for you, or do you want to be part, do you want to have a voice? And so I know that really drives people to vote as well. So it goes back to the education and information of letting them know the power of that one vote, and then call 5 other people, bring 4 other people to the polls with you, and then you amplify that voice.
Okay, so I think we're getting ready, getting close to that time. So I would like for our panelists to have some final thoughts on the discussion that we had today. What are some of the things that you want our audience and those who are watching to get out of this conversation that we just had?
One final thought, I think, is don't discount us. Don't discount our communities. Engage the Hispanic Latino communities. Go to the communities. Get out there and talk to folks and find out what their values are, find out what their issues are, find out what's important to them. I think as a candidate, you will always be able to find some type of common ground with folks, but get out there and listen. Listening to me is the most important part, because as a candidate, you're going to represent whatever constituency. So whether it's the district, whether it's the city, county. So not only do I represent the voices of my neighbors, I represent everybody that like to meet everybody in the district. And so listening is such a big part. You have to get out there in the community, you have to engage, and you have to listen. So please do not discount the Hispanic Latino community.
I would say that I want to remind people that when we have an election, there are really 3 aspects to the election. There's the ballot by mail. If you're 65 and over, disabled, are going to be out of the county on the day of the election. Folks can vote by mail, and so there should be an outreach to Hispanic seniors and folks that are disabled to at least know that they have that right to vote by mail. Then there's early voting in person, and again, some successful candidates do early vote rallies. In the African American community, there's this great movement called Souls to the Polls, So do early vote rallies to get folks to go vote. There's a park near early voting site. Host a rally at that park and march everybody across the street or down the road to go vote at the early voting site. Then there's election day. Make a big push because it's not that hard. Under Texas law, you do have the roster of folks that vote early. So from your list of registered voters, and again, just to be clear, it is public information to determine if you're a registered voter and what elections you voted on. They can't tell who you voted for. That is always secret. If you want to tell someone who you voted for, that's fine. So by election day on your list who has voted and who has voted. And so, as Roxanne said, if I look at the list and none of my brothers have voted, I'm going to call them, right? or none of my children have voted. I'm going to call them, hey, you better go vote. You got till 7 p.m. tonight, And so that's the other way. And again, there's all these techniques. And the Hispanic vote is important. Here in Texas, looking at the demographics alluded to earlier, they are or will be the swing vote, right? The Republican Party has effectively done outreach to the Hispanic community throughout the state. The Democratic Party sometimes has taken the Hispanic vote for granted. So we're in a battle for this state, and whichever party gets the lion's share of the Hispanic vote is going to be the party in power. And the same thing here in Tarrant County. And as Ricky said, the Republican Party has done a very effective job with messaging on values. Very, very effective. You see Governor Abbott now running ads. His wife is Hispanic. He's got a war chest. Beto O'Rourke is a tough campaigner. It's going to be an interesting race. The polls show Governor Abbott ahead. But guess what? They're fighting for every single vote. And O'Rourke's not conceding the rural vote either. He's out in rural communities. And guess what? There are a lot of Hispanics in rural communities, right? So I'm actually pleased that both parties are fighting for the Latino vote. I'm pleased that we're having this discussion today. As I said at the beginning of this, we are here, we matter, we are part of the community, we're part of this country. We are proud Americans, proud Tejanos, proud Fort Worthians, and proud residents of Tarrant County, and we want to be heard.
Hope everybody's still awake out there. You guys doing okay out there? I want to say first that I feel very encouraged. We have the Hispanic community is waking up, as you can see what's happening in the Valley. You can see that candidates are realizing that Hispanics want, values that are family, faith, and freedom. We have great candidates coming up. We have Raul Gonzalez over there in Arlington, Tito Rodriguez, North Richland Hills, Oscar Trevino, and Manny Ramirez running for commissioner. So we're seeing a lot of Hispanics getting part into the political process, or getting involved with the community. And so I would say that we're waking up, we're realizing that we have this power. I think we're showing it to other candidates, to other elected officials, like, oh my goodness, there's a whole group of people now we have to pay attention to. Yeah, you do. We want faith, we want family, we want freedom. So treat us, we're Americans, you had to come after us like any other vote, and just realize that, we're moving in one particular direction, and frankly, we want to be part of the process, and we're just Americans like everybody else. But go out there, we're a massive voice. And so I feel very encouraged the past few years that just Hispanics are waking up and realizing that we have this power.
Thank you all. So I just have just real quick, a couple of dates to keep in mind. The last day to register to vote is Tuesday, October 11th. Last day to apply for ballot by mail is Friday, October 28th, and that's when it has to be received by October 28th. Early voting is Monday, October 24th through Friday, November 4th, and the best day of the year, Election Day, November 8th. So Thomas Martinez has a few final words for today's discussion, but I want to take the opportunity to thank our panelists for Thank you for taking the time to discuss this important issue with us. I'm Juan Antonio Ramos. Gracias.
Thank you, Juan Antonio. First, for those of you that had questions that didn't get answered, we apologize for that. A little bit of a time constraint. It's been an honor to listen to such accomplished, thoughtful individuals discuss the growing impact of Latino voters in Tarrant County. I'd like to thank Juan Antonio once again, our panelists, as well as our sponsors. We wouldn't be able to do and share these opportunities with the community without your generosity. And just a reminder, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that believes in journalism for the community, supported by the community. And we are free. So everything on our site is free. All of our articles are free to read. Donations, big and small, allow our newsroom to provide quality, fact-based journalism that is local to Fort Worth and Tarrant County. If you'd like to make a donation today, please feel free to scan the QR code in the bags that we have provided for you guys. Those are the teal cards in those bags. Thank you once again for coming out. Our next event is October 19th, where we will talk about how Tarrant County, the lessons Tarrant County has learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. This event will be on Texas Wesleyan's University campus, and we look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you.